Hey all, hope you're all doing well. Wanted to talk today a little bit about Biden's first military action following yesterday's airstrikes um, against Iranian-backed militias in Syria. So, based on initial reports, it sounds like at least 22 people were killed as a result of the strikes, mostly Iranian-backed militants. And the direct impetus of the strike came from a rocket attack that killed a civilian contractor and also injured a U.S. service member and five other contractors after following a rocket attack in Erbil, Iraq, which is part of the Kurdistan Autonomous Region. Um, and this is really a pattern. So this is the BBC initially reporting on it. There's also a good article today in the New York Times that as it mentions here and it has been stressed, and I think is an adequate description. This is mostly a proportional retaliatory attack against these Iranian-backed militias, following a pattern of this behavior over the past few weeks and in general the past few months. It's proportional. I would say with regards to their attacks against U.S. personnel and, for that matter, contractors and our allies in Iraq. And it does so in like a tit for tat type of manner that should hopefully send the message to these Iranian-backed groups that the U.S. will not tolerate, further aggressive activity on their part against U.S. interests in in Iraq, and in the Middle East in general. Obviously, as these types of overseas military actions do tend to elicit a decent amount of controversy, especially nowadays following the, kind of as the U.S. comes to grips with the legacy of the war in Iraq and in Afghanistan, along with other interventions the U.S. has had. And you see the Democrats, and I'm sure some Republicans renewing a push for war powers overhaul, to basically rein in the executive's ability to launch attacks abroad, without, perhaps informing Congress and getting their approval before doing so. You have people like, former vice presidential candidate Tim Kaine, Chris Murphy, along with House of Representatives Representative Ro Khanna from California, all pushing that, as you can see here, he tried to curb Trump's ability to take military action against Iran and argued that there was absolutely no justification for the Syria strike. This attack, for me, I think it is completely justified. I mean, you look at the history and, Trump kind of surprisingly showed a remarkable amount of restraint, I would say, towards the end of his administration, where he did not respond to a rocket attack that hit the U.S. Embassy in Baghdad. That likely was done again by Iranian-backed militias that did not kill any U.S. personnel, but did kill one local civilian. And my best guess is that the attacks inability or failure to kill U.S. personnel was likely what helped rein in, potentially some desires from the Trump administration to retaliate immediately. But this go around, where you had U.S. military personnel injured and contractors either killed or injured, I think did warrant an appropriate response. But it's not really, for better or worse, it's becoming more of a bipartisan issue to attack any type of interventionist type activity, whether it is to defend, Americans abroad that are getting, attacked or killed by Iranian-backed militias. You even have here Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene, saying here that Joe Biden jumped right back into Barack Obama's Syrian civil war yesterday. Well, frankly, just, I mean, fact checking MTG is a difficult thing to do nowadays because there's so many things to fact check. But, we can start off by saying that the Syrian civil war was not caused by Barack Obama. And, frankly, the Obama administration's involvement in Syria, in my opinion, was relatively limited. That and, this is not in my book, a offensive attack against Iran or its allied forces in the region. Rather, it is a very proportional retaliatory attack that's meant to signal to the Iranian regime that the U.S. will not tolerate any type of, action, interference against U.S. personnel in Iraq or in the Middle East in general. And, I think that this just brings up a good note to end this this article here, or this video, by talking a little bit about, what I would say Biden is doing is very similar to what Trump did with regards to Syria and Iraq, which was, aside from targeting ISIS, in continuation with the Obama administration's policies, military operations in the region were very limited and very selected to either, like, for example, 3 months into his administration, President Trump ordered a attack on April 7th, hitting Syrian government forces in response to a chemical gas attack that had occurred. I personally was completely in support of this because, you need to uphold these international norms with regards to chemical weapons. But one could even make the argument that that was a much more aggressive strike because it targeted the Syrian government and was not in a direct response to, not a direct attack on U.S. military personnel or contractors as this one was. So, based on like this list, and, you can make the judgment yourself. But, the Trump administration was not afraid to launch attacks against the Syrian government and its proxies, which are often heavily related to Iranian-backed militias, in order to enforce international norms and to also ensure that, American interests in the region were being upheld. So, it's important just to kind of keep that in context whenever you hear criticism from, the, strong right wingers like Marjorie Taylor Greene, which I don't know if it's even fair to call her a right winger. I think just she kind of falls into her own type of category. But, when you hear criticism from them, along with criticism from the Democrats against the Biden administration, it's important to remember that, there's a relatively limited attack, and it's done just to enforce, I would say, the, idea that the U.S. will not tolerate offensive action by Iran and its proxies in the region. And, I think it's also important to highlight the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, a little over a year ago, where, that was an extremely aggressive measure by Trump. Frankly, it's something that I think that the United States should have done, years, if not decades ago, given Soleimani's, often direct links towards, funding these militias, supporting Shia-backed terrorist groups in Iraq and in Syria to, basically attack U.S. interests in the area, and, is tied likely to the results to the result of, hundreds or dozens at least of American casualties during the Iraq war, in the first decade of the 2000s. So, me personally, I thought that this assassination that Trump launched, was an appropriate response to the Iranian military and, proxy forces aggression in the region. But, it still goes to say, like, that was an extremely aggressive, bold move, I would say, by the Trump administration. In comparison, what Biden did yesterday pales to this. So, I just highlight this all just to keep it all in perspective, to, emphasize that what Biden did yesterday is not too far out of the the norm of U.S. policy responses. And I think that we, on a bipartisan basis, should applaud the actions of the Biden administration, at least with regards to this particular action, because it's upholding, American interests and basically showing that the U.S. will not accept its, its overseas military and civilian personnel from being attacked. So anyways, I'll conclude it at that. Thank you guys for watching. Hope you found it interesting. As always, feel free to comment and let me know any of your thoughts. Thanks again. Hope you have a good one. Bye.